Each day begins as a blank parchment, silent, untouched, waiting. How you mark the first lines will shape the script of the hours to follow. The morning is not just a time of day. It is a test of your intention, your discipline, and your sovereignty over yourself. To rise and meet the morning with presence is to declare that you will not be ruled by chance or impulse, but by reason and will. Do not stumble into the day. Enter it with clarity. Before the world makes its demands of you, decide what you demand of yourself. Is your mind calm? Is your heart steady? Is your aim firm? Some wake up and immediately reach for noise, scrolling, reacting, consuming. But the wise do the opposite. They begin with silence, with thought, with gratitude. They prepare the mind as one sharpens a blade before battle. Not because the day will be easy, but because they intend to face it with composure, whatever it brings. To win the morning is not to chase pleasure or perform routines for their own sake. It is to set the internal order, to act rather than be acted upon. To rise before the sun or with it is to declare that the day does not own you. You own the day. Remember, your power lies in what you control, and what you control is how you greet the dawn, whether with purpose or with passivity. If you wake and reach for excuses, then you have already surrendered. But if you wake and reach for your principles, then nothing that follows can truly defeat you. Not failure, not misfortune, not even pain. So prepare the soul before you prepare the schedule. Win that quiet battle within. Master your mood before the world tries to shape it for you. The rest of the day may bring chaos, but you will bring order. The rest of the world may seek distraction, but you will walk with direction. Win the morning not with noise, but with intention. Not with speed, but with stillness. Not by reacting, but by reflecting. And if you win the morning, you will not merely endure the day, you will lead it. The way you rise each morning sets the rhythm for everything that follows. Before a single task is done, before a single conversation is had, before the world begins to pull at your attention, there is a moment that belongs entirely to you. And in that moment lies the quiet potential for mastery. Not over others, not over the world, but over yourself. The first light of day is not simply the start of time passing. It is the invitation to meet yourself with discipline, clarity, and purpose. It is a test that most do not even recognize is taking place. Yet how you meet it reveals everything about how you will face the hours ahead. The temptation to delay, to indulge in comfort, to reach for the phone, to escape into distraction is subtle but powerful. It disguises itself as rest, as easing into the day, as harmless routine. But it is in these early habits that character is being shaped or lost. When you open your eyes and immediately hand your attention to the outside world, you are not beginning the day. You are surrendering it. You allow the thoughts, opinions, demands, and chaos of others to dictate your mental state before you've even had a chance to form your own. This is not a neutral act. It is the forfeiting of inner authority. The Stoics understood that every day begins with a kind of battlefield, an internal one. The enemy is not other people or events, but your own instincts left unchecked. Comfort, laziness, distraction, doubt, these are the forces that must be confronted and over time mastered. And the battlefield is the morning. You either direct your mind or it is directed for you. You either command your attention or it is scattered by the noise of the world. This is why discipline in the first moments of the day is not just a productivity hack. It is a philosophical practice. It is a declaration. I choose to live deliberately. Discipline is not rigid control. It is not waking early for the sake of appearance. It is about choosing to align your actions with your values before the demands of the day begin to shape you into something else. It is the decision to begin the day with intention, with awareness, and with a sense of purpose that comes from within. It could be as simple as sitting in silence, moving the body with presence, reading a few lines of wisdom, or breathing deeply in stillness. What matters is not the form, but the state of mind it cultivates. This practice of rising with discipline sharpens the... Every time you choose not to act on impulse, you strengthen the muscle of self-command. It may seem like a small thing. Getting up on time, resisting the urge to scroll, committing to a simple routine, but each of these acts is a form of inner training. You are preparing yourself for the rest of the day's challenges by first proving you can meet yourself. If you cannot win in the quiet of the morning, how will you hold firm in the noise of the afternoon? If you cannot resist the first temptation, how will you resist the 100th? The mind, like the body, must be exercised. And just as strength is built through repetition, so too is resilience built through morning practice. The habits you form in the early hours teach your brain what to expect. If you flood it with distraction, it learns to seek distraction. If you fill it with reflection, it learns to seek depth. The first hour of the day is the training ground for your attention, and attention is the foundation of everything else. Your thoughts, your emotions, your work, your relationships. People often speak of goals, of dreams, of becoming better. But the truth is that nothing changes unless your mornings change. The beginning of each day is a vote for who you are becoming. When you choose discipline over comfort, presence over distraction, stillness over chaos, you are not just preparing for the day, you are preparing for life. You are reinforcing the identity of someone who leads themselves, someone who does not wait for motivation, someone who is not swayed by impulse. This kind of discipline creates a certain posture toward life. It is not hurried, not frantic, not reactive. It is steady, it is deliberate. It acts from principle, not mood. And this posture, once built in the morning, can carry you through the entire day. It shows up in how you speak to others, how you handle pressure, how you make decisions, how you respond to setbacks. It is a quiet strength that others may not see, but you will feel it. It is the difference between being driven by events and being guided by clarity. In a world that constantly pulls at your senses, that rewards speed over thought and distraction over focus, morning discipline becomes a rebellion. It is the refusal to live passively. It is the daily act of returning to yourself before the world tries to define you. And the beauty of it lies in its simplicity. You don't need complex systems or grand gestures. You need only to begin, to rise when it's time, to sit with your thoughts, to honor your breath, to remember what matters, and then to move, not in a rush but in alignment with what you know to be true. This commitment to a disciplined morning does not promise that every day will go as planned. The Stoics would never make such a claim. Life will remain unpredictable. People will remain flawed and obstacles will continue to arise. But what this practice offers is a foundation, something solid from which to meet the world. It gives you a center from which to act rather than react. It helps you maintain your posture, even when the winds of the day try to knock you off course. Discipline in the morning is the first form of self-respect. It is a way of saying, I matter enough to begin my day with care. My values matter enough to be lived, not just spoken. My mind matters enough to be directed, not just filled. This is the quiet power of the early hour. It belongs to you, and what you do with it, what you choose, how you rise, how you begin, will echo through everything that comes after. In a world where urgency has become the default mode, most people start their day not with intention, but with momentum they didn't choose. The alarm rings and almost immediately the mind is hijacked. By messages, by headlines, by lists of things to do, by fears left over from yesterday. There is no pause, no reflection, no separation between the self and the storm. The day begins with reaction, not reflection. And what follows is not truly a life lived, but a series of responses, a mind constantly bouncing from one stimulus to another, never quite anchored, never truly still. The morning offers a profound opportunity. It is the point where you decide how you will relate to the world, not just what you will do within it. But this opportunity is often missed because the mind has not been prepared before the body begins to move. People make plans, set goals, and commit to routines, but they forget the one thing that governs all of it, the state of the mind itself. If the mind is fragmented, distracted, or anxious, then even the most carefully planned day will feel chaotic. There will be a constant sense of chasing, of rushing, of being just behind something that never quite slows down. Mental preparation does not require elaborate rituals. It requires sincerity. It is the practice of turning inward before turning outward. It is the act of facing your thoughts with honesty, noticing what pulls at you, what concerns you, what you're avoiding. It is sitting for a few minutes with the intention to understand rather than immediately solve. Most people want clarity, but they do not stop to listen. They look for it in apps, advice, or routines, but they forget that clarity must begin in the mind. You cannot organize your tasks if your thinking is disordered. You cannot find peace in action if your mind is at war with itself. There is a difference between thinking and being lost in thought. The former is active, intentional, and directed. The latter is passive and unconscious. The mind, if left unobserved, tends to spiral. It clings to worry, regret, comparison. But when you prepare the mind with awareness, you reclaim agency. You become the observer, not just the participant. This shift, though subtle, is powerful. It is the beginning of self-mastery. You learn to recognize which thoughts serve you and which pull you into unnecessary turmoil. You begin to see how often your mood is shaped not by events, but by unexamined narratives that run quietly in the background. The morning is a window of clarity if you choose to use it. The world is still quiet, the demands are fewer, and your thoughts are unformed. This is the ideal time to check in with your principles. Ask, what matters today? What do I want to bring into the world, not just get from it? What kind of person do I want to be when difficulty arises, when I am tired, when others are unkind? These questions are not mere philosophy. They are practical tools for orientation. They give you a compass, something to return to when the day inevitably pulls you in many directions. Mental preparation also protects you from being pulled too easily by emotion. It is not about suppressing feelings, but about creating enough space between feeling and reaction so that you can choose your response. When the mind is prepared, you are more likely to notice when irritation begins to rise or when fear begins to distort your thinking. You can catch it before it turns into action. This is not detachment. It is clarity. It is acting from strength rather than being driven by whatever emotion happens to be loudest in the moment. Without this foundation, even the best strategies and habits tend to falter. You might follow a plan, but if your mind is restless or scattered, that plan will feel burdensome. You might try to focus, but your attention will be thin and short-lived. You might intend to be calm, but you will find yourself overwhelmed by things that, upon reflection, do not actually matter. The issue is not your schedule, but your state. Mental clarity is the soil from which all action grows. If the soil is poor, the results will be poor, no matter what seeds you plant. To prepare the mind is also to align with what you can and cannot control. This is central to a grounded life. When you begin the day by recognizing what is truly within your power, your thoughts, your attitude, your effort, you free yourself from the exhaustion of trying to control what is not. You no longer waste your energy resisting things that simply are. This acceptance is not passive. It is the ground of real power. It allows you to direct your limited energy toward what actually matters. This kind of preparation also builds trust in yourself. When you consistently begin the day with mental clarity, you reinforce your ability to navigate it with steadiness. You develop a deeper sense of confidence, not in outcomes, which are uncertain, but in your ability to meet what comes with presence and integrity. This kind of trust is quiet, but it radiates. It shows in how you speak, how you listen, how you work, how you rest. It becomes the foundation for a life that is not easily shaken. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself. It is built slowly, morning by morning, in the act of meeting yourself before the world does. It does not depend on success, recognition, or praise. It depends only on whether you've taken the time to know your own mind and guide it rather than be ruled by it. This is what preparation truly means, not perfection, but intention. Not control over life, but clarity in how you move through it. When you start the day with this kind of inner alignment, the external challenges of the day do not disappear, but they lose their power to define you. You carry something steady within you that does not need to be proven, only remembered. The mind is naturally restless. It wanders, it grasps, it runs ahead or falls behind. Left to its own devices, it rarely stays where the body is. It lingers in yesterday's regrets or leaps toward tomorrow's uncertainties. This restlessness is not inherently wrong. It is a product of a mind built to survive, to anticipate, to solve. But when that restlessness is left untrained, it becomes a source of suffering. It scatters attention, weakens presence, and clouds perception. The practice of stillness in the morning is not a retreat from life. It is a return to it. It is the simple, powerful act of anchoring the mind before it is carried away. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is not the elimination of thought. It is the cultivation of a calm presence within the motion, a centered awareness that sees thought without becoming entangled in it. It is like watching clouds drift across the sky without chasing or resisting them. In the early morning, when the world is quiet and the demands of the day have not yet arrived, the mind is most receptive to this practice. It has not yet been hijacked by external noise. This makes the morning an ideal time to train it gently to bring it home. Many misunderstand stillness as a kind of inactivity or passivity, but in truth, stillness is effortful. It is a discipline of the inner life. It asks that you do something quite radical in today's world. Pause, not out of laziness but out of intention. Not to escape the world, but to engage with it more clearly. The person who begins their day in stillness is not avoiding responsibility. They are preparing for it. They are choosing not to be dictated by the first emotion that arises or the first impulse that demands attention. They are choosing to respond, not react. Stillness is an antidote to the constant pull of urgency. The modern day is filled with things that want your attention immediately. Messages, notifications, news, expectations, all of it creates a sense of pressure, as if you must do something now or be left behind. But when you start your day in stillness, you reclaim your time. You decide that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every demand is urgent. Not every noise is meaningful. You create space to discern, to breathe, to remember what truly matters before the floodgates open. This clarity makes you more effective, not less. When the mind is grounded in stillness, it becomes sharper, not duller. It can focus more deeply, listen more carefully, and act more decisively. The person who is inwardly still is not slower. They are more precise. They do not waste energy on unnecessary conflict or mental clutter. Their actions are rooted in thoughtfulness. They know where their energy is going because they have chosen it, not because it was stolen by distraction. Stillness then becomes a kind of efficiency, not of speed, but of depth. It also becomes a refuge. The day will bring challenges, this is certain. People will frustrate you, plans will change, uncertainty will arise. But if you have touched stillness in the morning, you carry with you a quiet space that no one else can reach. You do not have to retreat from life to find peace. You carry it within. This kind of peace is not fragile. It does not depend on circumstances aligning perfectly. It depends only on your relationship with your own thoughts. And that relationship is strengthened each time you sit, breathe, and allow the mind to settle. Even a few minutes of stillness can change the tone of the day. When you begin with quiet, you learn to value it. You begin to notice when the noise of the day is too loud, when your thoughts are spiraling, when your attention has been hijacked. This awareness alone is powerful. It allows you to return to stillness throughout the day, not always in formal practice, but in brief moments of pause, a breath before a meeting, a moment of silence before speaking, a step back before reacting. These are not signs of weakness, they are signs of self-possession. The mind, once trained in stillness, becomes a companion instead of a saboteur. It stops pulling you in 100 directions. It stops creating storms where there are none. It learns to rest, to observe, to move with intention. This does not mean you stop thinking. It means you stop being ruled by every thought that arises. You gain the ability to see thoughts as whether passing, temporary, not always worth believing. This changes how you experience difficulty. You begin to realize that much of what feels overwhelming is the result of unexamined thoughts, not external facts. Stillness also connects you to something deeper than intellect or opinion. In the silence of the morning, you can hear what is often drowned out, your own intuition, your own values, your own inner voice. The noise of the world is often so loud that people forget what they believe, what they care about, what they want their life to stand. But in stillness, these things become clearer. You remember that life is not only about doing, but about being. Not only about achievement, but about alignment. You start to act not just efficiently, but meaningfully. There is a kind of strength in a person who does not rush. Not because they are lazy, but because they are deliberate. They have taken time to understand themselves, to see clearly before acting. This strength cannot be faked. It comes from a rootedness that is earned through consistent practice, and it begins in the quiet hours when the rest of the world is still asleep. While others scramble to catch up, the person who has cultivated stillness moves steadily forward, not always quickly, but always intentionally. Stillness in the morning is not a luxury. It is not a soft indulgence. It is a necessity in a world that constantly pulls you away from yourself. Without it, you risk living in a state of continuous reaction, constantly influenced by things you never chose. But with it, you reclaim your agency. You decide how to move, what to say, what to value. You become more than a passenger in your own life. You become the driver. And that control does not come from domination, It comes from discipline. The morning offers this gift freely, but few take it. Not because they don't want it, but because they don't believe they need it. They assume they will find peace later, once everything is done, once the world quiets down. But that moment rarely comes. Peace is not something to be found at the end of the day. It is something to be created at the beginning. And once you have created it, even briefly, it becomes something you can return to, something you can rely on. It becomes your starting point, your anchor, your edge. Most people wake up and immediately begin reacting. They react to alarms, to notifications, to emails, to whatever demands rush in before they've even had a chance to think. In this reactive state, the day begins not with direction, but with chaos. There is no space between stimulus and response, no pause to choose one's course. Instead, life becomes a blur of interruptions, each moment dictated by external pressures rather than internal principles. It's not that these demands are inherently wrong, but that we surrender our ability to respond to them with wisdom when we haven't taken the time to define our intentions at the start. To shape the day deliberately, you must begin by deciding who you are going to be in it. This requires more than a to-do list or an agenda. It requires a clear intention, a guiding orientation for how you will face success and failure, praise and criticism, order and disruption. Without this foundation, you risk becoming someone who is constantly pulled in directions not chosen, someone whose energy is spent not on what matters but on what screams the loudest. Intention is the anchor that allows you to move through change without being swept away by it. When you define your intention in the morning, you are not predicting how the day will unfold. You are not attempting to control outcomes or prevent chaos. Instead, you are deciding how you will show up regardless of what the day throws at you. Will you respond with patience or frustration? With discipline or distraction? With compassion or indifference? The point is not to pretend that challenges won't arise, but to prepare yourself to meet them with clarity. In this way, intention is a form of inner preparation. It is a shield against being ruled by your lowest impulses when pressure mounts. This practice is not about controlling time, it is about directing energy. Everyone has the same number of hours in the day, but how those hours are lived depends almost entirely on where attention and effort are placed. Without clear intention, your energy is easily consumed by distractions, by tasks that feel urgent but are ultimately unimportant, by emotional reactions that drain rather than sharpen. With intention, your time becomes aligned with your values. Even if the schedule becomes messy or plans shift, you stay connected to what matters. You are no longer a leaf in the wind. You are rooted. There is quiet power in beginning the day by asking a simple question: what do I want to embody today? This is not a goal in the traditional sense. It is a standard for how you wish to live. It might be clarity, presence, resilience, humility, or focus. Whatever the quality, naming it gives shape to your decisions. It becomes a filter through which you interpret what happens. When someone interrupts your routine, you ask yourself not just to what should I do, but to what does my intention call for here? This turns daily experiences into opportunities for practice, for embodying your chosen way of being. Intention is also a remedy for the feeling of being lost in the world's expectations. Too often, people begin their days already buried beneath the weight of what others want from them. The demands are subtle but constant. Be faster, do more. Compare yourself, prove yourself. When you begin with intention, you take back your autonomy. You remind yourself that you are not here to live someone else's script. You have the right to define success for yourself, to choose your battles, to walk a path that feels aligned rather than impressive. This kind of freedom is not given. It is claimed day by day with each deliberate beginning. Deliberate beginnings do not need to be elaborate. They can be as simple as sitting for a moment in silence and reminding yourself of your priorities. They can take the form of journaling a few lines about what matters most today. They might include reading something grounding, reviewing principles that guide your conduct, or simply breathing with intention. The form doesn't matter as much as the spirit behind it. What matters is that you are not entering the day asleep. You are entering it awake, aware, and ready to live on purpose. Over time, this practice transforms more than just the morning. It reshapes your relationship with time, with work, with others, and with yourself. You begin to recognize patterns that sabotage your clarity. Each morning becomes an opportunity to realign, to reset, to begin again with presence and purpose. Intention also strengthens resilience. When life inevitably disrupts your plans, you are less likely to be thrown off course. You may need to adapt, but you do not need to abandon your principle. A grounded intention gives you flexibility without weakness. You can bend without breaking because your identity is not tied to external conditions but to internal commitments. Even in difficulty, you remain yourself. You respond from a place of choice, not from fear or habit. This kind of strength is not built overnight. It is forged slowly in the quiet repetition of morning after morning spent choosing how to live. Some days you will drift, forget, or fall back into reactivity. But the practice is forgiving. Each morning offers a fresh start. The key is not perfection, but persistence. By continuing to begin deliberately, you train yourself to live deliberately. The morning becomes more than a routine. It becomes a ritual of self-ownership, a declaration that you are not merely surviving the day but shaping it with intention. There is also humility in this practice. You are not assuming that everything will go your way. You are not arrogantly trying to control the uncontrollable. You are acknowledging that you will face uncertainty, discomfort, perhaps even suffering, and yet you choose to face it with dignity. You are accepting the weight of responsibility for your own conduct, knowing that while you cannot guarantee outcomes, you can always choose how to show up. This humility is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the strength to act without guarantees, to commit without control. In the end, the quality of a day is often not determined by what happens, but by how you move through what happens. Two people can face the same external events and walk away with entirely different experiences, one frustrated and scattered, the other composed and fulfilled. The difference is not in the world, but in the intention each brought to it. When you begin the day with a clear sense of who you want to be, you give yourself the best possible chance to live that day fully, not perfectly, but with presence and purpose. You are no longer merely reacting to life. You are responding to it as the person you have chosen to be. The way we begin our day often determines the direction of our inner dialogue. From the moment we open our eyes, a conversation starts within us, sometimes quietly, other times with overwhelming volume. This conversation can be one of encouragement and clarity, or it can be one of judgment, doubt, and distraction. If left unchecked, this internal narrative can sabotage even the best intentions. It can convince us to delay what matters, to avoid discomfort, to chase distractions. That is why the morning must become a space not just for waking the body but for directing the mind. It is the time to confront thought with thought, to shape perspective before perspective shapes you. We often imagine that thinking just happens to us, like weather patterns, but thought is not passive. Every thought carries with it a weight, a direction, and a consequence. When we allow the mind to wander aimlessly in the early hours, ruminating on what went wrong yesterday, worrying about what might go wrong today, we are setting the tone for how we will interpret reality. We are giving power to assumptions and emotional noise before reason has had its say. A disciplined mind knows this and acts accordingly. It begins the day by shaping the thoughts that shape the day. This is not about forced positivity or pretending that life is easier than it is. It is about examining your thoughts honestly and asking if they are useful, if they are accurate, if they deserve to direct your energy. Much of our suffering is not the result of external events but of unexamined beliefs. We assume we are behind, we fear we are not good enough, we anticipate failure before effort has even begun. These are not facts, they are stories, and they must be met with better stories. Not fantasies, but grounded perspectives that remind us of our strength, our capacity, and our responsibility to act. Self-talk is not trivial. It is not just mental noise in the background of life. It is the script by which we live, the dialogue that frames our choices. When that script is dominated by fear, comparison, or laziness, our actions begin to reflect that inner defeat. But when the script is shaped by discipline, clarity, and self-respect, our conduct elevates. The person who tells themselves, "I can't," eventually stops trying. The person who tells themselves, "I will begin," eventually builds momentum. The conversation we have with ourselves is not private. It is the foundation of how we move through the world. The morning offers a unique opportunity to rewrite that script. Before the noise of the day enters, before the expectations of others flood your attention, you have a window to speak to yourself clearly. This is the time to challenge the unhelpful thoughts that crept in overnight, to question the assumptions that diminish your courage, to replace complaints with commitments. This practice is not loud or dramatic. It might be as simple as a phrase written in a journal, a mantra repeated silently, a list of intentions spoken aloud. The form is personal. What matters is the act of reclaiming authorship over your own mind. One of the most powerful habits a person can develop is the discipline of counter-thought. That is, the practice of meeting a negative or useless thought with one that is grounded in reason or virtue. When the thought says, "This is too hard," the counter-thought is, "Hard is not bad." Hard builds strength. When the thought says, "I don't feel like it," the counter-thought is, "My feelings are not the measure of what needs to be done." This is not suppression, it is clarification. You are not pretending that difficulty doesn't exist. You are reminding yourself that it does not get to define you. It is in this process that the mind becomes your ally instead of your adversary. Too often, people believe they need to wait until they feel motivated, clear, or confident before they begin acting with intention. But waiting for those feelings is a trap. They come and go. They cannot be trusted to guide action. What can be trusted is your ability to train the mind to return to clarity even when emotion clouds it. This training begins with the thoughts you allow to grow in the morning. Like planting a seed, your first thoughts often determine the emotional climate of your day. Discipline in self-talk is not about being harsh. It is not about scolding yourself into performance. True discipline is quiet, firm, and respectful. It says, "I know what needs to be done. I may not feel like it, but I will do it anyway." It is the voice of the rational self, the part of you that is not at the mercy of mood or impulse. When you hear the voice that says, "Skip today," discipline replies, "That voice has spoken before, and its advice has led nowhere." You begin to separate your higher aims from your lower habits. You begin to trust the voice that speaks from values, not excuses. This kind of self-talk builds integrity. When your words to yourself are aligned with your actions, you develop trust in yourself. You no longer make empty promises. You no longer use language to delay or deceive. Instead, your internal dialogue becomes a place of commitment, of alignment. You wake up, speak to yourself with clarity, and then follow through. Each time you do this, you reinforce a deeper belief that you are someone who does what they say. That belief becomes a foundation of character. And character is what remains when motivation fades, when pressure mounts, when no one is watching. It is important to note that the quality of your self-talk is not something fixed by personality. It is a practice. It can be learned, refined, improved. But like any practice, it requires consistency. If you begin each morning letting your thoughts run unchallenged, that becomes your baseline. But if you begin each morning with a moment of conscious speech, whether silently or aloud, you gradually raise that baseline. You begin to recognize the patterns that derail you. You begin to introduce new language that supports action, resilience, focus. Over time, these words become not just thoughts, but habits. And habits become identity. What you repeatedly say to yourself becomes your lens on the world. If your language is vague, fearful, or passive, your perception will be shaped by avoidance. If your language is clear, grounded, and purposeful, your perception will be shaped by resolve. You will see opportunities where others see problems. You will find paths where others find walls. This is not magic. It is perception trained through deliberate self-dialogue. And that training begins every morning when you decide whether you will let the mind wander or whether you will give it direction. There is a quiet dignity in the person who begins the day with clarity of thought. Not just intellectual clarity, but ethical clarity. They know what they expect of themselves. They know what they are working toward. They know which voices in the mind to ignore and which to amplify. This person is not immune to doubt, but they are not ruled by it. They have learned to respond to that doubt with steady, principled self-talk. In doing so, they carry into the day an inner atmosphere of steadiness. That steadiness is not a result of personality, it is the product of practice. And it begins with how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. The way we carry ourselves in the early hours has a ripple effect that extends far beyond the moment. The first actions of the day are not just isolated habits or mechanical motions, they are expressions of a deeper philosophy. When you rise and immediately engage in something that demands effort, presence, and self-control, you are declaring, not to the world but to yourself, that you are someone who takes responsibility for how you show up. This is a kind of quiet leadership, an act of reclaiming sovereignty over the day ahead. There is a natural resistance to early action, and that resistance should not be feared. It is a teacher. The mind will present excuses. Just 5 more minutes, so you deserve rest. You can start later. These thoughts are not your enemies, but neither are they your guides. They are tests, challenges that reveal whether you are governed by feeling or by principle. When you move through them, when you act despite them, you begin to separate what is helpful from what is merely habitual. You begin to live less from comfort and more from conviction. Starting with action also reduces anxiety. Often the weight we carry is not from doing too much, but from doing too little of what matters. We drag our feet, we postpone decisions, we distract ourselves, and with each delay, the burden grows. But when you face the task directly, when you start instead of stall, a kind of lightness returns. You are no longer haunted by the undone. You are no longer negotiating with yourself in a dozen directions. You are simply doing what needs to be done. And in that simplicity there is peace. This peace comes not from having everything figured out, but from the knowledge that you are acting in alignment with what you value. You are not betraying your goals. You are not hoping the day will save itself. You are meeting it with effort, with structure, with a sense of ownership. And that ownership is powerful. It means you are not at the mercy of mood or chaos. You are beginning to define your days not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to engage with what happens. Even small acts have meaning when they are done with intent. A single stretch, a breath taken with awareness, a handwritten list of priorities. These are not trivial gestures. They are anchors. They pull you out of passivity and into presence. They remind you that life is not something to be endured until the next vacation, achievement, or distraction. It is happening now, and it deserves your full attention. Morning action, then, is not just about getting a head start on work. It is a deeper affirmation that your time matters, that your choices matter, that you are capable of acting with clarity even when ease is tempting. Ultimately, beginning the day with action is a vote cast for the kind of person you are becoming. Each morning is an opportunity to practice becoming that person, to embody discipline, presence, effort, and intent, not through grand gestures, but through the simple act of doing what needs to be done before excuses gather. This is the essence of quiet strength. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not seek applause, but it builds something inside you that no one can take away. The knowledge that when the world is still asleep, you are already awake, already in motion, already aligned with what matters most. Win the morning, win the day. This is not just a phrase, but a quiet commitment. A philosophy lived out in action before noise, clarity before confusion, and intention before impulse. It is in these first moments that we choose who we are becoming, not once in a lifetime, but every single day. So begin with care, begin with courage, begin with discipline. The world will meet you soon enough. Meet it already standing.